Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Production Pulse, Industry Week's regular series of live streams to discuss important topics in the news. And today, my guest is Mike. Mike, I forgot to ask you how to pronounce your last name, so I'm going to make an attempt here and probably get it wrong, but Bassador?
That is correct in the United States. However, if you are in Italy, you must sing it. It is Bacidore.
Great. Thanks for joining us today, Mike.
My pleasure.
Mike is with our control design group and does some great work there, talking about where the machinery really starts tying into networks. So it's a fascinating intersection of that IT, OT world and where a lot of the really interesting things are happening these days. We are hoping that Bob Vavra from our machine design group will be able to join us a little bit later, but we're still waiting on some technical issues there. Our topic today is generative AI. Since the launch of ChatGPT and its rush to 100 million users, the fastest in internet history, and all these sorts of headlines that you've seen, manufacturers have been asking, what can it do for me? And I keep getting press releases and emails and pitches about how great ChatGPT is going to be for the manufacturing world. But frankly, I'm a little skeptical. And so I asked Mike to come on and talk about what he's seeing and what use cases there might be, and where AI really is in the manufacturing world. Oh, and it looks like Bob has just managed to join us. So let me get him on here. This is Bob Vavra, who is the editor of Machine Design. And he's also going to be speaking with us too about generative AI. Welcome to the show, Mike. Bob.
Good morning.
Hey, Bob.
Thanks for being with us. As I said, the big question is AI in manufacturing, specifically this generative AI, ChatGPT. What can it do for us? Where do you see some advantages? And Mike, let's just start with you. What do you see as the big thing? If you could say there's one thing you could spot that the manufacturers might be able to gain from this.
Sure. Well, AI generally has numerous applications in the manufacturing sector, which you and I have talked about, from quality control and digital twin production to production efficiency and predictive analytics. But when we're talking specifically about generative AI, I think the primary applications for those are really in writing code and in creating more efficient designs. And the developments that I'm seeing have been primarily upstream from the factory or plant. In control design, we cover specifically the original equipment manufacturers, so machine builders and system integrators that are providing that manufacturing equipment to the factory or plant. And while there's a curiosity about AI there, the use cases are really coming from the automation suppliers. And there are examples that I can share with them later with you if you like. From companies like Beckhoff and Siemens and Yaskawa and even Emerson. Geez, I almost forgot about Emerson. They're in various stages of AI offering. And the reason I think that this upstream production of the generative AI is probably twofold. First, there's this general trend toward democratization of technology, where suppliers can provide more cost-efficient automation that replaces either technically skilled workers or the need to create that same technology on your own. Why would you spend money to build it when you can buy it off the shelf or with some minimal modification from an automation supplier? And then the second reason, I think, is because the cost and the resources needed to create or even to run AI can be higher than many small to mid-sized manufacturers might be able to bear. I mean, the energy cost to power a single server rack at a data center in the United States is $30,000 a year, which doesn't seem like a lot of money. But when you couple that with the fact that a single training run from an AI engine consumes the power equivalent to 120 US households in a year, that's a pretty significant amount of money. And then with AI, you have these parallel computing that's required, and couple that with the fact that CPU architectures aren't necessarily customized for AI, and the fact that AI computing is doubling every 3 to 4 months now, and then you're looking at a pretty significant cost to those individuals or to those factories and plants. And I think these factors, as you and I talked about recently, Robert, these factors are probably leading us to yet another as a service model. In software as a service, we've seen robotics as a service, we're seeing production as a service now, and I don't think AI as a service is too far off in the distant future.
As we were talking before the show started today, there have been so many. I keep getting press releases and things talking about use cases. There was a research report I saw yesterday, and it was talking about a lot of things like using ChatGPT to better understand your production environment. Like, well, that I guess you could use it. I can also, cut a board in half using a drill instead of a saw. You just make a series of holes and then break it in half with your hand. But it's not the best way of doing things. The industry's been using AI algorithms, machine learning to better understand its tools and equipment. Predictive maintenance has been around for over a decade now. Quality control using white light systems and AI powered systems to check specs on small parts. That's been around for over a decade now. So the best explanations I've seen for what generative can do are things like, well, keeping track with your sales force, generating emails when something might be behind in the system, something along those lines. So automated alerts, which sure, there might be a business case, but it's not the revolution that we talked about with Industry 4.0. Bob, what's your take? What are you seeing or hearing that excites you or depresses you about these topics?
Well, and I think the thing that Mike pointed out earlier is really important. This is, first of all, coming from the supplier and the system integrator down to the manufacturers. For the large manufacturers, they've got staff on hand who can handle and manage and evaluate this technology on a continuing basis. For the small to mid-sized manufacturers, they're still trying to wrap their heads around what would now be considered some fundamental things like having robotics in your supply chain or having better data management than you've got now to be able to evaluate and do predictive maintenance, even prescriptive maintenance. So adding AI into this mix is, at best daunting for a lot of small to mid-sized manufacturers. They're still looking to understand where the ROI is on this. What's the use cases? What am I going to get out of this? Because the service end of it is you can have an Emerson or a Rockwell or a Siemens manage this for you front to back, end to end, and send you alerts, and that'll all be fine. But that's going to be ultimately an expensive proposition if you don't know what you're looking for, if you don't know what you want to get out of the data, what you want to get out of the AI from the very beginning. So I think a lot of the small to mid-sized manufacturers still want to be educated on what the use cases are, how to best apply them to their solutions, and then they're going to start to listen about this. The one thing I've seen about small to mid-sized manufacturers from the start is they are reluctant to change, but if you make a use case for them, they'll move very quickly because they don't have the large corporate layers that a lot of other manufacturing operations have. 50 people can get a tremendous advantage out of data management and AI if they know what they want to accomplish and can be shown a use case for it.
Some of these technologies seem so radical and different a few years ago and have become so commonplace. I was doing a webinar the other day and someone mentioned how, well, traditional machine learning can do that. And one of the speakers just pointed out that, traditional machine learning used to be science fiction. So the idea that machines can do all these things themselves, what was shocking to us a few years ago, now it's just commonplace. We have machines that change the cutting parameters based on the output from the machines. We have relatively inexpensive systems in some cases that can adjust production speeds to match the machine conditions and weather conditions and things like this. So the industry has gotten pretty sophisticated in terms of like a lot of these as a service type offerings that you've both mentioned, or even the in-house solutions.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's necessarily some wariness of the idea of AI. It's just understanding what AI really is.
Yeah.
Well, and I think to your point, these smaller to mid-sized companies certainly can turn on a dime. That's a great point. the fact is, with predictive analytics or predictive maintenance, even though, I mean, that's been around for 50 years, a very long time. And the problem with making that transition in a lot of these smaller companies is the culture change that's involved with that.
Yeah.
And I keep hearing a lot now about, oh, we'll just add AI, or we'll add IIoT to it, and that'll fix the problem. And now all of a sudden we'll just go and we'll be a predictive maintenance we'll have a predictive maintenance strategy in place, or prescriptive if we're using AI, for example. But that doesn't happen without the culture change. And so, especially at those smaller companies, that could be a very daunting task. Is you've got older employees who have a lot of tribal knowledge that they can walk into the building and smell a bearing that's about to fail. And how do you get them to buy into this new AI-inspired system that all of a sudden is going to take over their jobs?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we've seen in that the gap in employment right now is we have those experienced workers that you talked about, Mike. We've got the young people coming in who are expecting AI, who are expecting
absolutely
predictive maintenance. We have a gap in the middle, though, of an age group that we don't have a lot of, that we need more of, who are have a little bit of both. They've got some experience in manufacturing, but they've also got the willingness to take on some of these more automated operations, these more digital operations, and really get the value out of them. I think one of the things that I've seen a lot over the last few years is that, you know, this revolution all started because sensors got cheap and data management got more powerful. And suddenly we were measuring things that we'd never been able to measure before in timeframes we'd never even imagined. The downside was we didn't always know what to do with the data.
Right.
A lot of AI is giving us the ability to better parse that data and deliver it to the right person at the right time in the right context. But you're absolutely right, Mike, is that the technology works. It's the people that are going to slow down the adoption of this. You've got to have a strong culture that's not only top down saying this is the direction we're going to go, but middle out that says, here's how we're going to take this directive from the C-suite and move it into our operations so that we're more efficient front door to back door to begin with. And then we involve our full supply chain in adopting all of this. So we've got a much deeper, stronger ability to take full advantage of the data.
Absolutely.
The whole idea of the unintended consequences of the cell phone or the smartphone really was, I mean, the cheap cameras, the cheap, powerful, rugged cameras that turn out to be just ideal for industrial settings, where it used to be, you know, setting up a CCTV system in a factory to try to track quality. One, the quality was awful. The quality of the imagery was awful. Mm-hmm. It was incredibly expensive. It was slow and not terribly useful. Now, boy, it's pennies to put in a camera on just about every single machine in your system, and then with the right tracking software, you don't really have to have a person sitting there every day monitoring that and trying to figure out what's going on. You get automatic alerts. As long, again, you have to have that software partner. You have to have someone coming in showing you what to do with the information. Just having the images doesn't help, but the cost is minimal compared to what it would have been a few years ago.
Sure. The other thing that I think that is really changed is that most of the systems, not all of them, but most of the systems that we're dealing with, these component parts, are agnostic. So you can take a Rockwell controller and a camera from another vendor and another, you know, you can put them all together and they will work seamlessly with one another. And so you can kind of pick and choose. That's where the integrators come in. I think where their real value is being able to find the various Lego blocks and put them all together for you to give you a strong front to back system. I really like the idea that we're getting much more systematized by some of the larger vendors. Siemens has come out with Accelerator, which is a great product. Nobody is going to buy Accelerator front to back, soup to nuts. But the concept is, look, we can integrate anything you've got with anything we've got and drive it throughout your organization and give you all the information you're looking for. No plant is going to rip and replace and put in Accelerator, but plants are going to be able to say, I need to manage that data better. I need a great overlay to the systems that I've got now, and I've got to have confidence that I can connect everything to everything else.
Right. Yeah, great points. Even to that end, since you brought up Siemens, that was one of the at the ARM Institute, the Advanced Robotics for Manufacturing Institute, which is one of the Manufacturing USA institutes. I think there were 16 or 17 of them around the country that were originally funded back in the, I think during the Obama administration. I drew a blank on Barack Obama's name. One of the projects, they have 8 new projects that are being funded for the second round. I think the original funding was about $1.5 million, and now they've dumped in another $1.7 million. And Siemens and USC is developing an AI that can help to more clearly define precision programming for robotics for scooping materials for different processing applications. And that's a great example of a generative AI application where it's creating robotic code in order to primarily replace workers who, spill things and who are, need breaks. So it becomes much more cost efficient. And in that same ARM Institute, one of the other, I think there are 8 applications that are up right now. And one of the other ones is from Ohio State and Yaskawa. And what they're doing is they're deploying AI robotic systems that are capable of producing component geometries, primarily for metal forming. And there's a U.S. Military partner in that one. So it's being used for a military application as well, and as well as in the automotive field. And then there are 2 other applications that I did want to mention as well in the generative AI. One of them is Beckhoff has a TwinCat chat client, which uses ChatGPT in OpenAI. It's cloud-based, and it's used to generate function block code. And it's on the verge of being released, the last I knew, but it's forthcoming. And even at this point, Beckhoff does say, you want to review the code before you go ahead and implement it, because, it's still in its, formative application. And then the one software that is available now is Revamp from Emerson, which is for plant modernization, where it can generate code for your safety instrumented systems, for your control systems. And of course, you need the Delta V DCS to be able to use this one with Emerson software. But why would you if you were on a Rockwell-based platform or something else? But these are all examples of generative AI software that is either on the verge, or in the case of the Emerson, it's here. Mm-hmm. It's ready, and it's coming from the supplier down through the automation distribution channel right to the factory floor.
Yeah,
that's great stuff. We're running a little short on time here. Just one last question for both of you. Let's start with you, Bob. Have you played around with generative AI? Have you dealt with ChatGPT or Google's Bard or any of these others to see what they're capable of? And what do you think?
I have not played with ChatGPT at all. I prefer ChatBOB. I'm old school. My first publishing was on stone tablets, so I'm understandably a little leery of it. I think for those things that need to be vanilla, ChatGPT is a great is a great tool, because it does get you to exactly the middle of the road, and exactly what you put in is what you're going to get out. But I think to Mike's point, from a coding standpoint, there may be some real value there that can be more intuitive than a human might be able to manage. But I think one of the stories that popped up as we were talking about this, we are looking at the limits, both the practical and the esoteric limits of things like generative AI. And I think that's where people are going to take baby steps before they get convinced that it's going to help them or it's not going to help them.
All right, thanks, Bob. And you, Mike, have you played with these tools at all? What do you think of them?
Yeah, certainly. The ChatGPT has, my experience at least, has been. I mean, we've used it for content purposes, and it does tend to be redundant. The issue with it is, with the ChatGPT, for example, it's a singular conversation, so there's no context to it. Whereas like with an auto GPT, you've got some overarching type of objective that it uses its memory to try and get to optimizing a solution. So with ChatGPT, it's got its place, but it doesn't really get smarter. It needs recalibration before it can do something better than it did it the last time. It's still going to give you the same answer to the same question. So that's the real issue I have.
I've been playing with all of these back and forth for the past few months, and I found some real use cases, but they're very specific use cases. I think it's probably the best tool I've ever seen for fighting writer's block. You're stuck on a story, right. You're stuck on a line. You feed that into ChatGPT and say, give me some other way of saying this. And it doesn't even usually give me something I can use, but at least breaks that mental logjam and gives me some ideas on how I can approach that.
Great idea.
There were a couple of stories I was editing that I just didn't like the way they were organized, so I fed them into the system and said, hey, put this in a more logical order. And it did a fairly decent job of that. Still had to go back and work with the author to rewrite large sections of it and really make that work. But it had some suggestions there that were kind of useful. The idea of using it to just generate content from start to finish, I'm not sold on. But I kind of look at it as almost like the spell checker or the calculator, even the calculator for words. People who have the calculator, the handheld calculator, when Texas Instruments came out with that in the 60s, created a new environment. There were people who had a decent head for math, but were bad at arithmetic. And all of a sudden you took that one skill they didn't have and took it away. And you took away the need for it because you had a machine that could do the addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. I kind of see ChatGPT and some of these other tools in that vein. It's for people who have something good to say and have some great thoughts, but struggle to get the individual sentences out. I think it's a fantastic tool for them. I'll be really curious to see where we are in 10 years or so when this becomes a tool that people use to improve their writing. I don't see it as something that generates material. I think it's something that can definitely improve material. And I think in the manufacturing world, we could see the same thing. When it comes to a great programmer can probably come up with a really clever way of getting that machine to do exactly what they want it to do. A mediocre programmer who might have some good ideas but doesn't know how to write code, there's some opportunities. And we're already seeing the low code and the no code applications throughout manufacturing. This could really open up programming to a wider group of people, and that's kind of exciting.
Like I do remember hearing. I know we're getting close on time here, but I do remember hearing Andrea Zaman from Pearson Packaging at Rockwell's Automation Fair last year, and she was talking about AI and how soon she expects it to be here. And she's about my age, so not a young person necessarily, but she was saying, at least within the next generation, she anticipates there being AI available at the plant level or at the factory level. And one of the things that it dawned on me was that, right now we worry so much about cybersecurity and opening the plant network up to infiltration and cyber threats. And once you have that AI within the factory or within the plant, that really eliminates a lot of the necessity to open up that network except on, a very limited basis where it's, red light, green light. If there's a red light, that's a problem because the factory's running autonomously. So I guess somebody needs to get over there and see what the heck is going on. But aside from that, 10 years from now, we might be talking about plants that are just running themselves.
Yeah.
Just like we're talking now about how the technology from 10 years ago just seemed like science fiction back then.
Yep.
Right. Well, Bob, Mike, thank you so much for your time today, and thanks for participating in Production Pulse. If you want to read more about this, there's a lot of coverage of AI and generative AI issues in control design, machine design, and at Industry Week. Thanks for your time today, and we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Thanks.
Thank you.